I recently had the opportunity to sit down with the executive director of Vancouver's Overdose Prevention Society, Sarah Blyth. The Tyee recently reported a lengthy feature that was much needed. The title is this: Mass death on this scale is incomprehensible. Overdose deaths may be down, but they are still high. And as Karen Ward reminds the Tyee, these are not just numbers. Every single death is a person, a human, who has passed, likely due to the unregulated toxic drug supply. My conversation with Sarah Blyth is extremely timely, sadly, but very insightful. Again, Indigenous peoples are overrepresented. According to the First Nations Health Authority, between 2021 and 2024, 4,000 Indigenous peoples experienced toxic drug overdose, with 343 deaths. The BC Coroner Services estimates that 225,000 British Columbians use unregulated drugs. With a toxic supply that is currently circulating, and what you will hear more of from someone working on the front lines, Sarah Blyth, this is a real danger. And we are still very much in the middle of a crisis and health emergency. You may notice that during this episode, you won't see as much of Sarah and myself as expected. We had quite an insightful conversation before we started recording, therefore took up much of our technical capabilities. But the episode, regardless, is one you don't want to miss. We can't ignore this crisis. It has not gone away. It continues to take the lives of British Columbians, and we cannot approach this as an addiction issue. It is so much more layered than that. And one of the primary issues is the fact that we have deadly, toxic, unregulated drugs being used by 225,000 plus British Columbians here in BC. I hope you enjoy, or at least are informed by this episode with the Executive Director of OPS, Vancouver's Overdose Prevention Society, Sarah Blyth. You are now streaming Rachel Thexton Connects. I announced this episode a couple of weeks ago, mostly because I was excited about it. Sarah Blyth, Executive Director of the Overdose Prevention Society in Vancouver, otherwise known as OPS, was one of the first guests on the podcast in season 1 in January of 2023. So that was more than 3 years ago.
It was.
And today we get to sit in person. It's 3 years later. Things have changed, but things have not changed. So we are here to have a discussion. Sarah Blyth, Executive Director of the Overdose Prevention Society, Vancouver. Thank you for taking the time, Sarah.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm thrilled to have you here. I want to chat with you about a few things. I want to clarify and debunk a few myths. But first, I want to ask you, how are people doing here? What's the drug supply like? How are substance users doing? There's not as much attention on things. Tell us about the realities of how things are right now on the downtown east side.
Well, I think it's 10 years, maybe a bit more, since fentanyl became really the main drug in the downtown east side and really started. It took over everything and it didn't change back. And we went from seeing people just overdosing in alleys in the street and running to us, because I was working at a street market, we were outside, to being able to bring some people inside. And now we see up to 600 visits a day at our overdose prevention site. And we train people, we help people along. But we've also seen a lot of people die, because inevitably, if you use alone, you're risking dying, because you just never know if you're going to get a hot spot in your drugs, if you're taking cocaine and it's got fentanyl in it. And so people that do die, they die alone usually in their apartments. And I was talking to one drug user the other day, and he was saying it's been a long time and even though we're saving lives here, sometimes people get complacent and they think, well, I've got my dealer and, I'm just going to use it home alone. And so there's only so much we can do. But except for continue to educate people to never use alone, always use together. But we're still losing people that we know. And it's tough. In the very beginning, we felt a lot of optimism that we would be able to make significant change. And we have, in the sense that people are not dying in an alley or being found 10 minutes into an overdose and having severe brain damage. And we have a lot of training, but we've lost a lot of people. We do memorials at ops for community members, and we've done a lot of memorials now. And so that's really hard. It's hard. And I think it continues to be hard. And people say, well, why do you guys keep doing it, seeing as it's so hard? And I think we want to see an impact and an end to this. But it's much more challenging because the drugs keep changing. And really, right now, we're seeing a lot of more tranquilizer, less fentanyl and more tranquilizer. People are withdrawing. And they're also unconscious for hours. They don't know what's going on for hours. And so it's just different levels of toxicity and drugs. And now with drug testing, we can test after someone's taken it and find out automatically what happened, especially if it's like you get 3 people overdosing at the same time. And then you take their drugs and you test them, and there's some accountability with that. You can say wherever you got this from and go back and say, this is unacceptable. And even with the color of the drugs that people right now, the drugs that are really bad are green. So you can say don't take the green drugs. You know what I mean? So there's and having a place for drug users to go, to get on a schedule to work, to help to get housing. We have 2 recovery navigators. We run recovery meetings every day of the week, different types of recovery meetings, both SMART recovery, and then we host NA meetings and AA meetings here that are run separately by those organizations. But we help people get into recovery every day. So there's a lot of different things that we do to try and help people, but it's difficult. We were talking about earlier, detoxing is one thing, but then realizing that it's a huge uphill battle for some people who've been using drugs for a long period of time to get out, to get back to work, to get back to family, to get back to housing, all of those things. It's not an easy road for every person. And some people, it's an easier road depending on whether they have mental health issues, because sometimes if you're taking fentanyl or some other drug and you come off it, then your mental health issues skyrocket. And then you maybe haven't been properly diagnosed. Every person has a different reason they're using drugs and a set of complications to get them back to living the life that they want to live. And so we are always trying to plan out people's life that they want to live and try to get them there, whether it be starting from the alley to talking to your parents again, or talking to your kids, all those kinds of things.
When I came in, I saw crates of vegetables, donations, food, clothing. Harm reduction is a huge and significant part of what you do here, but there is so much more. Can you just list off a few of the vital things that you are doing day and night, 365?
Well, I think getting people to their as healthy as we can get them, whether it be food, whether it be clothing, whether it be housing, whether it be introduction to recovery, whether it be proper medical or mental health care, whether it be HIV, Hep C diagnosis, and then treatment for those diseases. It's so important to even getting people into getting their teeth taken care of, right? Because all of these things give people something to live for, and getting your teeth fixes can be a huge thing for someone, because if you go into detox and your teeth aren't fixed, your mental health you haven't got a plan for that. Or even if you've got severe pain or long cancer, or there's a lot of different things that can come up. If you haven't really dealt with those things, it makes it harder to recover if you want to recover. It's harder to recover if you've got Hep C, but if you can get that out of the way. And so we try to help people break down some of the barriers, whether it be some of the things that they might have not thought about or not wanted to think about, and try to face those things so that they're not big anxiety.
It seems like the spotlight has dimmed when it comes to what it was around the emergency that is happening in the downtown east side with the deaths. One is too many, but I mean the number that you see. Do you agree with that? And some of it's political division, a lot of division there. Some of it is because those numbers of deaths have decreased some. This isn't as splashy of a story, yet the numbers are still significantly high. What do you think about the spotlight dimming and what that's done for, in a negative way, to draw attention to an issue that is very much still?
I think it's the overdose crisis is not any crisis, I think, that we've dealt with in the world. COVID, we've had diseases like that in the past. And so there are some blueprint of how to deal with that. And I think right now, there hasn't been a real blueprint on how to deal with a drug contamination catastrophe. And it's really not in people's control. It's in control of people who obviously don't care about human life, or the people they're giving those drugs to. Or there's other factors involved, like poverty and things like that. So I think there's a lot of things that have worked. Overdose prevention sites have saved lives. They've become part of the frontline response. And we work with all the frontline responders, and they always let us know that it'd be worse off without us. People save lives in their own housing that are trained in the community, by the community. And there's things that should be done, but the politics get in the way. Politics is all about pointing out failure and digging into that and making the other guy look bad. And so in this situation, because it's so complicated, the solutions, and there does need to be a lot more done. You can only walk down the street and see people lying on the ground to know that we need more indoor areas for people to go. We need to get people off the street. We need to get them into places where they're being cared for. But sometimes the politics of it, including different groups advocating for funding and how different groups are advocating for funding to be compensated through a crisis like this. I'm not going to name any groups in particular because I think it's all politics this is bad and I need funding to deal with it. And it becomes pretty complicated politically. And then the politicians are reacting to that, right? We need funding because if we do this is going to get better. And it's not always necessarily the right thing to do. And it's a new crisis. So some of it is we try to do certain things and some of it doesn't work the way that we thought it might and might have unintended consequences. And some things work better than we thought it was going to work. And you can see some of our recovery navigators that work right out of our overdose prevention site, working with people, getting them housing, all of those things. We can see how that's working for people in a positive way. And so we're right on the front lines. So sometimes what you see politically is from being on the front lines and what they're saying politically to get elected doesn't match what you're dealing with. And the solutions they're proposing are from a place of not actually spending much time down here.
Not understand.
So, and then you get the opposition politicians that are like, how do we make this look as bad as we can? And these are our solutions that don't make any sense. So it just becomes so complicated. And it has been just a political issue one year after another. And in a lot of ways, seeing people on the street dying should be a political issue. It just should be one where we're all working together like we did with something like COVID, where the crisis and the people are dying is beyond the actual issue itself, I guess. There's politics around COVID too, and there continues to be.
You and I both have our own separate, different, first lived experience with substance use. The drug user who is in their multi-million-dollar penthouse using cocaine or whatever other drug they choose to use. We have the drug user who is a corporate leader who is drinking constantly. And then we have the drug users of the downtown east side who are, from what I see, very much judged and stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
There's a problem with it. That hurts me, that angers me, that frustrates me. And I try to keep those more extreme emotions leveled, because I know that it won't get me anywhere when it comes to change. Do you agree with this concept of there are many types of drug users and what's
some people have
vulnerable ones being targeted?
I think it has to do a lot with poverty. It has to do with mental health related issues. It has to do with not It's easier to get out of it if you've got a lot of support. Complicated foster care, complicated trauma, complicated mental health, kids that fell through the cracks due to those things and then are preyed upon starting from high school. And when I was a teenager, you could do drugs and drink and you weren't going to die, right? You could party and have fun. But now it's a lot more, it's dangerous. It really is. It's dangerous to go out and do drugs at a party, take a pill, just don't know what it is. And we really need to educate young people that if they're taking Xanax, that it could have fentanyl in it, and they won't tell you, and maybe it's not going to kill you, but you could easily become addicted to it. And then you want the Xanax, and then you're a young person using drugs. It's terrible. It's a terrible situation. Whereas when I was young, you could take drugs and they weren't as addictive. And for folks, young people who have learning disabilities or they're having a hard time, it's a relief from that. And so not wanting to think about all those things or not fitting in all kinds of different ways. And that's a lot of people's stories start like that. That's where it starts. A lot of people's stories start like that. And because fentanyl is more like a crack of heroin. Heroin has what they would say a longer lasting effect for a longer period of time. Whereas fentanyl is just a lot. You need it sooner and you're looking for it sooner. And so young people, it's obviously if that's in the drug supply of pills that young people are taking, it's bad. So I don't know if that answers whatever question you asked me.
Yes, it does. What is it like for you personally, Sarah? You do this job daily. You see death, you see hopelessness, you see depression. I know you see a lot of goodness and people helping, but you also see a lot of traumas and you experience a lot of traumas. Do you think that it requires, I said on the podcast before with guests that I feel like people have lost a bit of their humanity. Some have lost their humanity and seeing people that are just most vulnerable in our populations and they just don't seem to want to do anything, or if anything, they want to judge. What is it like for you to come do this work daily and to see that judgment and that division?
It's very difficult. You see people coming down here filming a lot, and there are ways to show the crisis where you're educating people, but you're not being exploitive. And there's ways of doing it that is exploitive and it's hurtful. People being filmed in a public way and showing up on YouTube with 500,000 views is never going to be good for anyone. And in fact, I've known a lot of people that's happened to, and their families see it, or they're now, how is that good? Like, I'm always of the mind that we want people to get out. If they get out of here, live the best life they're going to live. But if you've done something to them without their consent and you're just it's just digging them into a deeper state of, it's just traumatizing. It's traumatizing for them and doesn't help them to get a job in the future. It doesn't help them to do any of those things. So I just don't think it's productive in the way that those film people are wanting it to be. And I think it's a lot of self-serving people and with no sympathy at all. And maybe they think that they're doing something right in a way, but really it's just not helpful. There are ways to bring attention, and we do need to continue to push the government at all levels to continue to help people in the right ways. People need housing, they need food, they need community, they need opportunities, whether it be job or training, they need family, they need everything that everybody else needs in order to live a decent life. There's a lot of work that needs to happen to make that happen. And housing is a big one. Like I said, Vancouver Coastal Health, we've been working with them. They've done a lot of work over the years to try and make things better and advocate, and working with the Ministry of Health and Addictions and working with the different Ministry of Health and Housing to try and figure out solutions that are going to help people. But more needs to be done, and continuing and not have some of these terrible people pushing in wrong directions. Sympathy for people by people making fun of people who are homeless. And some of these people claim to be godly people, but you're not a godly person if you're exploiting people. You're not a godly person if you're hurting people.
Do you feel like it? I asked you this in a private conversation we have had. Do you feel like it requires lived experience or someone close to you having had lived experience to understand the dynamics of substance dependency, because there's this, I think, feeling amongst some that and it stopped being a good time a long time. What do you think about it?
I think like an addictive, it comes down to you can never really truly understand a struggle until you've had that struggle in your life. And it doesn't matter what struggle that is. It could be having a kid or any of being a single parent or struggles with eating disorders. Having lived experience, you can never really put yourself exactly in someone else's shoes. But if you've had any kind of mental health related issues or any, for me, bulimia, anorexia, other types of ADHD, those things that I wanted to cover up at different times of my life. So I know, and I went through some similar things with my father, who actually lived in the downtown east side for a period of time and was homeless, and he was in and out of recovery. And so I can understand where people are coming from, because I know what the pain feels like. I know what the stress feels like. I've seen where they've been. I know, not in the way that they do, because everybody has a different struggle, but I just think there's a lot to do with empathizing with someone, how difficult things can get, and what you could do to get out of that, and if you have the life experience of being able to go into recovery or detox, or just need NA, or you just do it on your own, that is the key to understanding what everybody needs to do. You hold the key. And you'd see that with people like Trey, where he'd say, I did this, and when I was going through recovery, that happened to me too. And I felt like that. And this is what I did about it. I went to the gym. I got prescribed an antidepressant. I had to look inward to try and fix that. And I went to counseling, and this is what I asked for in counseling. Or I've been through that before, and I know that sucks, but you'll get through it. And you can have any kind of doctor or anyone else, but really the only people that you can truly understand you are people that have experienced something like that. And you can really see it through people like Trey and our recovery navigators, and Hallie, who works here as a recovery navigator as well. I used to do fentanyl, and now I don't. And this is what I did. And now you can do this too. And people who've gotten on with their lives and are being really successful in their lives have changed. I was there with you as well. But that's the key. And I think we need to be looking at that. And that's why our Recovery Navigator program is so great, and why having recovery on site on demand is so important. Even if it's just, I'm thinking about getting into recovery, what would that look like for me? And just having someone be able to talk that through, or coming to a meeting and just checking it out and just seeing what it could look like to maybe eventually. And then maybe they don't come to another meeting for, a few months, but then they know it's there, and they'll come back, and because it takes many times.
Linear.
No, sometimes it takes many times. Like they go to an NA meeting, or they'll go to an AA meeting, and then they'll, no, I can't do this right now. And then they'll come and maybe go to a couple more, and then they'll try detox. And then they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Then they see that they could actually get that far, and they get a little bit further. And then they have people guiding them that say, well, that's just normal. That's normal to go in there for a couple of days, and congratulations for doing that, next time. And sometimes someone will slip, go use drugs, and they'll be like, I got to get back in there right now. I slipped up, but I really didn't want to do that. And if you can get them back in right away, you might be able to keep them in for longer. Making sure that people are on the other side of it, making sure that people are able to get on the right kind of medications that's an alternative to whatever they're using on the street. Yeah. Whether it be Suboxone, methadone, or any of the things, medication even, that they can get on, something that's not being on the street. Yeah.
With all this division, we're seeing cuts, to various nonprofits, and obviously that includes organizations who are supporting those in the downtown east side. What would you like to see for ops and for the downtown east side community? And how can people support? If they want to support from a distance, or
I think just places for people to go inside so that they don't have to be on the street to start out with, but also housing, connecting with family, more of the work that we're doing that's working. You know what I mean? In all of the years, after 10 years, we know what's working. We've been able to narrow down some things that are helpful for people, whether getting people medication, going to their doctor and figuring out what they need to take that can help them get stabilized on something, or whether it be getting into really easy access to recovery, or they just need housing, or they need support from family, or we've realized one-to-one with a lot of different people what's needed. And we've got a lot of support for people now and plans for people. And I think we just need to continue to build on that with people and work on mainly getting people inside so that they're not having to be outside on the street. And we're working on ways of doing that. And we continue to try to put forward solutions that'll work for people that they're asking for and that we think that'll actually improve their lives.
And how can people support, Sarah, if they want to do it from a distance or really on the ground, you're up close? How can they support you here at Ops?
We're always, we run an overnight shelter. So we're always looking for blankets, stuff like blankets, clothing. It doesn't have to be new or anything like that. We always are taking donations of clothing, but also just trying to be understanding and try to support politicians or whoever in coming up with humane and kind ways of helping people that make their lives better. And I think that goes a long way in trying to keep compassion. And I know that it's difficult times for a lot of people, but we always have to, most vulnerable people do need our support. And things won't get better unless they get proper support for everyone. We won't see an improvement until they get the proper support. We can't put Band-Aids on it. We have to make sure that they're getting in off the street, cared for properly, on proper medication, properly housed, all of those things, and continue to work towards solutions that are actually going to make a difference as opposed to pushing them from community to community, which it doesn't work long term. And having big event like FIFA coming, we want to be a city, especially in Vancouver, that shows that it can help people. And I think that really will reflect on how the rest of the world sees our city. Do they see us as kind and compassion, or do they see us as one of those cities that just sweeps it under the rug when people come? So I think we have an opportunity to show when we're planning this event that there's ways that you can focus support have a big event that helps homeless in some way. What is the legacy of that? How can we have a legacy for a situation that's difficult in Vancouver on people? And how are politicians looking at ways of improving?
Imagine that on the world stage.
Yeah.
The whole world talking about us as a compassionate and empathetic city versus a city that is just pushing the problems off to the side so they're not so visible. I think that's such an amazing.
I think there's always an opportunity to do better, but it's also reminding ourselves that compassion and helping people and doing the right thing in this situation is going to be better for everyone. Long-term real solutions of housing is the right thing to do.
Sarah Blyth, Director of Overdose Prevention Society, Vancouver, Executive Director of Ops here in Vancouver. This is the woman who is up, either in the ER or here doing all the hard work while we're all asleep at home or watching TV or reading a book. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. This is a topic that it may be important to me, and I can talk about it until I'm blue in the face, but this is a woman who walks the talk, and we are fortunate to have her speak with us today. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.